Good morning, or good evening, depending when you're watching this. This is going to be a video here of at least one part of the calculus summer packet for the 2014-2015 school year. I'll go through all the problems one by one, working them out from start to finish. Hopefully this will eliminate some confusion you might have. Be able to pause it whenever you want to rewind if you want to look at how something was done, and any additional questions you have, feel free to ask in class. All right, let's get started here. Number one. We're going to jump right into it here with number one. Let's back that out of there. What linear function does piecewise function follow on the domain from -1 to 1? And what is the slope of this function? Well, the linear function is a horizontal line crossing the y-axis, so that would be y equals 1. And the slope of that function would be 0. We got to find 1, 2, 3, 4 values. F of -4. So 1, 2, 3, -4. Dot, 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 dot. It goes up to right about there. Come across here, a little wavy there at the beginning, but what are we looking at? I don't know. 2.75 looks like a good approximation. Nothing definite here. Just looking for values. F of 0. That's exactly 1. F of -0.9999. That's going to be right here. That's also 1. And F of 3. 1, 2, 3. So that looks like it might be like 2 1/4, 2.3, something along those lines. Certainly between 2 and 2 1/2. All right. Of course, we can't find those exact values if we don't know what this function is. It does appear to be a square root function shifted up one, but we don't know that for sure. No information was given. Part C, we're supposed to approximate f of 1.5, so this looks like more of the same, and approximate f of -6. So 1.5 puts us here. So if that's 1 and that's 2, this is, I don't know, 1.6-ish. F of -6 takes us across maybe like 3.1 or 3.2. How about 3.15? Part D, give two approximations, one positive and one negative, for x when f of x equals 3. So when y has a value of 3, we get that, and this should be the same thing. So if we're looking at this and we're given an approximation, my approximation would be plus or minus 5. And that's what we're looking for here, is the symmetry between the two. If you tell me 5 and -5.2, then you don't quite understand the symmetry that you can see in this function. Give the range of this piecewise function. That's a word that's going to pop up quite a bit this year. Give the range. So range, it starts at +1, and it looks like it goes up forever to infinity, right? Those arrows going up and over forever. If f prime, that actually says if the derivative of x represents a function that describes the rate of change of f at any given point on f, estimate the value of each of the following. Okay, so it indicates the rate of change. Well, rate of change is a word you're familiar with, a concept you're familiar with. That's just slope. So if they're saying that this means the slope at a given point, we're supposed to estimate the value of each of the following. What is the slope at -2? So when x is -2, I'm right here. In order to determine the slope, what we're going to do is actually draw a tangent line. So if you can kind of visualize, and I'm going to erase the rest of this stuff on here right now. If I go to -2, and if you can kind of visualize the tangent line here, I'm going to draw in a line. See if I can make a tangent here. And not what I was shooting for. Let's go down a little bit more and move this line a little bit. So we kind of visualize that being a tangent. Okay, what would be the slope of that line? Well, I'm going to rise about 2 and run about 5. So maybe negative 2/5 for our slope. So at negative 2, f prime of negative 2 is approximately negative 2/5. Well, again, if we're talking about symmetry here, that means f prime of positive 2 should be positive, approximately positive 2/5. And f prime of 0.4, we don't need to estimate that. Because if we look up here, 0.4 is right there, that slope is 0. And we already talked about that in part 1. Alright, we say that f prime of negative 1 and f prime of 1 are both undefined. Why do you think this is the case? Well, I'm actually not going to answer that right now because I am curious to see what you guys actually think now that you've seen what the f prime really means as slope. They're now asking, why do you think that our derivative is undefined? Why do you think the slope is undefined at this point and at that point? I mean, why can't I just draw a tangent line like I just did here? So I'm curious to see what your answers are going to be on that. So let's move on to problem number 2, where we need to graph this piecewise function. I'm going to warn you here a little bit. This is going to be an ugly graph because I have trouble drawing nice lines on here, but we'll do what we can. Alright, so let me make a Cartesian coordinate plane. Make a nice one here. This part will be nice. So there's our set of axes. Make my pen a little smaller. How's that? Yeah, that looks good. So when x is less than negative 1, so here is negative 1. When x is less than negative 1, everything to the left, our function is just a horizontal line at 2. 1, 2. Alright. So less than or equal to, so that means it's going to be solid dot. And I'm just going to go out this way. Forever and ever and ever and ever. When I'm between negative 1 and 1, I have the graph of the absolute value of x. Well, if x is negative 1, the absolute value is positive 1. If x is 0, the absolute value is 0. And if x is 1, the absolute value is 1. And those are not or equal to, so that's why I've opened circles. So there's our absolute value graph. And when x is greater than or equal to 1, the graph takes on the graph of negative x. Well, negative x goes down like that. So when I put in 1, I get negative 1. When I put in 2, I get negative 2. 3, negative 3, so on and so forth. So there's our graph there. Actually, not a bad looking graph at all. So there is a piecewise graph. If you've never heard that, do a quick internet browse for piecewise function. Okay, it's pretty simple, and this kind of should have explained it to you if you have never heard of them before. But that is twice on the first page of the summer pack. You've now heard them. Alright, we'll wrap this page up, and then we'll start a new video for the next page. So given f of x equals that, find and simplify the following. Theme of the year. Not really, but theme. Do not use a calculator. Alright, f of 0, well 3 minus 0 is 3. F of root 3, well root 3 squared is 3, so 3 minus 3 is 0. And t minus 1, so we'll get 3 minus t minus 1 squared. That's 3 minus t squared minus 2t plus 1. So we end up with negative t squared plus 2t, right, minus a negative, and then 3 minus 1 is 2, plus 2. That is all for page 1 of the summer packet. We'll be back shortly with page 2.